All right, so hi everyone. Thanks again for joining us. For those of you who just joined, welcome to our show. What we'll be talking about today is how to stand out in the UX job market as a junior candidate so you could actually land that first UX job. So we have invited an awesome guest who is a seasoned UX professional and has lots of experience in the field and has hired many people, and we will share lots of insights on this with you and answer questions. We'll introduce our wonderful guest in just a few minutes. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Michael. I'm the founder of a company called BeginX. We help people who know UX basics and want to transition into UX. Our program is a part-time UX career accelerator with real mission-driven client projects that provides a guaranteed way to become highly marketable and land a UX role. Unlike most traditional boot camps or career programs, we allow participants to build real experience, strong real client portfolio, crucial soft UX skills like UX team collaboration, client and stakeholder management and presentation, and master the UX job search and interviewing necessary to actually land a UX role, all in a collaborative and fun environment and under the guidance of industry practitioner mentors from top companies. And I don't mean this to brag or anything like that, but just to give you a bit of a background for credibility purposes, the company is headquartered in New York City, and we have run many virtual cohorts and helped probably around definitely over 160 people get hired into UX roles so far. And we'll tell you a bit more about the actual program and also make a special announcement closer to the end of the event. Of course, that part is completely optional for you. Here are some companies that they were hired by, the grads who I was talking about. So we've seen lots of people go through this entire UX career transition journey. So this is the most fun part. So let's introduce our awesome guest, and then we'll jump into the interview. So Noelle, would you like to briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Noelle. I am living in New York with my dog Maisie and my husband Jonas. I've been working professionally for about 15 years across both large and small companies and across several different industries, including publishing, marketing, advertising, B2B, and banking. So lots of opportunities there to ask you to answer questions about industries. Most recently, I've worked at American Express and at Amazon. I am also a career changer. So I'm sure there are a whole bunch of people on the call who are moving from one field of work into product design and UX. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about that experience and to guide folks who are in that situation as well. I started off in marketing before I moved into product design. Within my product design career, I entered in originally as a generalist, doing both research and design before eventually moving into a managerial track as a director. So I can also speak a little about the individual contributor or IC track, as it's known, as well as the managerial track and how one moves through those two roles and back as well if you want to return. As a director, I had both researchers and designers reporting to me. So I did quite a lot of hiring, and I've hired in both of those fields, as well as product design ops. If you're still trying to think through where is the right role, where's the right fit for you, there are lots of questions I can answer about that. And also what it feels and looks like to be a researcher versus a designer. Last but not least, very exciting news. I recently started a new job just about 2 months ago. So I remember exactly what it's like to be in that stressful application process, what it's like to search and hunt for those job roles, and how difficult it really can be to prepare yourself for interviews and the different types of interviews that are out there, from whiteboard challenges, right, to app critiques, to portfolios, to resume. So that's a little bit about me. I'm extremely passionate about UX. I love what I do. I'll never look back on that career change. It was worth it. It was worth going back to school and getting experience in UX before I made that shift. And I'm happy to talk about all of those processes that I took and what I see today as people go through the application process.
All right. Thank you, Noel. That was great. So let's jump into the discussion. Really excited to have you as our guest, to have you back on the show. So you guys know that she is good. We invited her back.
It's great to be back.
We had
I love it.
amazing feedback last time. All right, and also just a quick reminder for everyone. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A tab. You should see that dedicated Q&A tab. This way, so don't use the chat, use Q&A. This way you can also upvote others' questions, and we make sure that we address the most popular ones that many people are interested in. And again, try to address all of them if possible. And we'll take it from there. So, and just a reminder again, we'll make a special announcement about the program we're running closer to the end of the event. And we'll also share this career transition roadmap summary handout. So stick around if you would like to get that as well. All right. So, Noel, what do you think has changed recently in terms of what UX hiring managers actually look for in especially junior candidates or maybe candidates in general?
That's a great question. So I think that the basics still apply. The basics, the fundamentals. So everything that Michael was talking about at the beginning, I wholeheartedly agree with it. You need to show soft skills. You need to show your hard skills and your craft, right? You need to have a solid portfolio piece. All of those things are essential, and without them, you're not going to get very far, right? And in fact, I'd go as far as to say you're not ready to apply without those items. I'd say, more recently there are a lot of people in the field today. So you really need to focus on what is it going to look like to make yourself stand out, and also how are you going to make yourself appear and show your uniqueness. And I think that's something that is becoming more and more important as the hiring process goes on. How do you show what your specific skill set is, what you're going to bring to the table? And I think there is a higher level of craft that people expect from junior designers. And what I mean by that is, when you go to look at a portfolio piece, the sorts of portfolios I'm seeing coming out of junior designers is high. It's not someone who kind of, self-taught themselves or put together smaller projects. They've taken a class, or they have worked with, done some volunteer work, right? Or they've done something in school, right? There's the fundamental level of the junior designer, I feel like, is rising. Additionally, there is a lot of talk about AI. And I wouldn't say that that's necessarily something that's happening in the hiring process, but as someone who is an individual contributor today and has been a hiring director in the past, I wonder a lot about how do I use AI to help myself stand out, use it in more advanced ways versus like creating, pictures with it, but really using it to build design work and to speed myself up. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing more of that and more of those things kind of show up throughout the hiring process. I do want to just add to, before I go too far into the interview, which is, I am speaking from my own personal perspective, in my own personal opinion. So I'm not speaking on behalf of any of the companies that I have worked for, or sharing any of that information. But this has been my personal experience, having applied recently and also being a hiring manager myself. And I'm also happy, Michael, to go into the details on what those portfolios should look like and what that craft should look like, because I assume that's gonna come up.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions on that as well. So that's cool. Yeah, and we're gonna basically shift perspectives, right? So we're gonna basically ask you some questions from the employer perspective, and then from candidate perspective, or just general, like what skills are important, etc. Right? So we'll try to, as you know, right, our events are typically quite comprehensive, as we don't just do superficial 10-minute interviews that motivate you for a little bit and that's it. So we dive deep into these topics usually. So Noel, in addition to what you mentioned, do you want to highlight anything else in terms of how the UX hiring process may be different currently versus what it was a few years ago or so?
Yeah. So I would say that, especially if you're going to be a designer, you really, really want to take a look at that portfolio piece you have. So the process today for most roles is you're going to start with a resume, right? And that resume has to be attractive enough to get you attention, to get in the door. There's also a lot of conversation around, and I've read articles on this about companies using technology that essentially scans your resume and looks for keywords, right? And whether or not you have enough of those keywords in is whether or not your resume kind of like makes it up to the top, right? And often at larger companies, there's somebody in a recruiter position who's kind of reviewing these resumes, checking them, and then is highlighting, hey, these are the top batch.
Hey, Noel, I'm not sure if that's everybody, but I think we
The
can.
first thing that you really want to think about
Yep.
is like, how do what I tell a lot of candidates. Yep, can you guys hear me?
Sorry. Yeah, we couldn't hear you for a second. I think now we can hear.
Okay, cool. I can always move to my cell phone if the audio is being funky here. It's raining in New York, which always impacts the internet. Um, yeah, so you really want to make sure that your resume is sharp. And what I tell folks is the first thing that you want to do is you want to know what role you're applying for. Are you applying for a research role? Are you applying for a design role? You want to really pick. You don't want to kind of hover in the middle and say, I can do research, I can do design. It's okay to add bullets about how you are capable of doing both roles, but you really want to make it very clear what role it is you are the most experienced in or you are most interested in. Because what you don't want is for a hiring manager to look at your resume and be kind of confused. And I've heard this. I've heard people say, oh, like, well, I don't know, are they a researcher or the designer? Are they a designer, researcher for UX, or are they researcher for marketing, right? Are they a UX and UI designer, product design, or are they really just brand and creative, right? So you don't want to be in a situation, especially if you're a career changer, you've kind of made it a little bit difficult for a recruiter or hiring manager to understand like where they're supposed to fit you. So that's probably, I would say, like one thing to definitely be careful of. The other thing when it comes to resumes is there is a lot of fluff out there. There are a lot of people who just write, I do information architecture, I do personas, right? I'm trying to think, I do journey maps, right? And you kind of throw these words out thinking this is a keyword, it'll get picked up in the back end server, right? And that may be true. But what ends up happening is a hiring manager will eventually read it and they'll say, well, to what extent did they do like persona work? Did they do journey mapping work? How many interviews, did they take? Or, like, was this really a researcher that they worked with? What was their role? And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to essentially destroy your trust and credibility by not putting down the details. You want to give enough details so people can really understand what it is you've done. And I would say even think back to experiences that and projects that you've had at school, in your current job. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, great. In your current job, and say, yeah, I worked with X number of stakeholders, and I specifically worked in the industry of sports psychology, and I achieved these goals. Right? You want to be very, very specific in the sense that a hiring manager can sit there and they can read, they can understand the scale and the scope of your work just by reading that quick blurb. They can know what it is you achieved. More quality bullets is better than quantity in these cases, and it's going to show a sense of your craft. And I keep coming back to this craft in my statements. Craft was a really big part of Figma's config conference recently, and when you hear about companies like Google and some of these other big tech companies too, you hear a lot about craft, and I think that we are returning back to a place of craft, right? Where we kind of started the UX industry around there. We got a little sidetracked, and now people are kind of coming back to it and looking to see what's there. And so you really want to make sure that that is showing up in your writing, in your resume, And then when you get to show your portfolio, there are a whole bunch of other ways that you really want to showcase your craft, even as a junior, that are there. And with so many people entering into the UX field, it's even more important that your craft really shine and really show. I would say I'm very impressed with some of the junior portfolios that are coming out. I think that they are stronger than when I started applying for the field, and that can be a little bit intimidating, but it can also be kind of great because it means that there are a lot of opportunities to learn and to practice and to get hands-on as a junior, even without having to have a job in that role yet. We can certainly talk about what that looks like too. But I would say that those are things that I've started to notice.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Noel. So here's what I also wanted to ask you. What do you think are the biggest things that prevent candidates from getting hired or make them look less attractive to employers? And what would be the answer to that for like more junior candidates specifically?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff, which
All
is
right, you
great.
have another 20 minutes.
So,
Just kidding.
I'm gonna say a big one is soft skills. That's something that I've really noticed. And I think when we talk about soft skills, people they say communication, they say working with others, how they grow through experiences, how they communicate those growths. We tend to put those things into the soft skill category, and I'm gonna call them soft skills just to make it clear. But really, when you think about them, that they are hard skills. They're hard skills in the sense that they are learnable, they are teachable, right, and coachable. And if you think about communication and you think about collaboration, not as like a personality thing or an introvert extrovert thing that you're naturally or not naturally inclined to, but you instead think of it as a hard skill that is learned over time, you're going to be much more successful at it. So within the UX field, you do a lot of communication. If you're interviewing a user, you're communicating to the user, and you have to be able to know how to get the insights that are important to you and your team. You then have to learn how to communicate those insights into your presentation when you talk to stakeholders. And let's just say you get through all that and you get to your designs, you then need to be able to communicate why your designs should be the designs that you move forward with. Because it's life. There's going to be a lot of pushback, right? Either from a stakeholder with a strong opinion, someone in dev, maybe another designer. So UXers are constantly in this place where communication is really important. Either they have to get the resources they need to do their work, or if they really have to push their work because they are the voice piece for the user when stakeholders are not in the room. And what ends up happening, especially with junior designers, is that you don't get the chance to have a lot of experience yet in communication. Simply because you are newer to the workforce, right? And so it can be very difficult to push your ideas forward or to speak up for yourself in kind of complicated, highly complex situations. And so what hiring managers look for is somebody able to speak articulately. Can they tell the story? When I ask them a question, about their portfolio? Have they just essentially memorized the portfolio and written off a script that them or a teammate has read, but when they go to answer the question on more detail, they all of a sudden can't answer it? Like these sorts of things are things that, we're kind of looking for when we're interviewing somebody, right? Because it not only shows how well do they know their subject, but more importantly, it shows how well can they communicate what's important. And can they do it succinctly? Can they do it quickly? Can they get the point across? And can they change my mind? Because they're going to have to do this exact thing when they get into a situation with a stakeholder. And hiring managers, right, as managers, as directors, they don't always have the time to onboard and coach a junior designer for a very long period of time, right? So they're expecting this person to be able to kind of step into that role after a while and to be able to communicate and speak for themselves, right? So the interview, in a sense, is almost a mock lab setting of what it's like to be in a meeting with a client, right, or a stakeholder. And you get to ask these questions about their portfolio the same way a stakeholder would ask questions about a design that person is showcasing. And you can see how well are they able to communicate it and to advocate for what they believe the designs should be. Even if the design is wrong, did they have a good reason for it? What was their thought process? Do they communicate that thought process in a way that I can follow it, even if I disagree with it, right? Those are really, really important skill sets. And interviews are a way that you get to show that skill. So you should go into the interview thinking it's not just about what I know, but it's about how I communicate and how I work with others, right? And I'll just add to that a little further. So there are interviews called whiteboard sessions. And whiteboard sessions, you can't really, you can't prepare a scenario for. You get there, they say, design this thing on the fly in front of me. And it's very tempting to be like, I'm just going to talk at you and here's my solution. It's brilliant at the end. And you could come up with the most brilliant, perfect design solution in the world. And that would not be good enough for a whiteboard challenge, because the whiteboard challenge is a mock lab setting of what it's like to work with you. Are you asking a lot of questions? Are you working collaboratively with your interviewer? Are you building something together? Or are you isolating yourself, working alone, just in your own bubble, right? Are you going to be a team player? Are you going to inspire the rest of the team that works with you? And so, like, you thinking about these interviews that you're going to have, like I said, from a perspective of communication and soft skills and how I am, what it's like to work with me as a person. We're human, right? We're working together. And then separately, my craft, I can show you my knowledge, I can show you my skill set. These are two totally separate things. And I think, when we're in entry jobs, there's a lot of imposter syndrome that comes up. And we just want to say, let me show you I know what I'm doing. Let me show you I know the steps. Like, I went to school, I learned the stuff. Like, here's my portfolio. It's beautiful. I memorized everything. It's perfect. And you forget that that technical part, that's only part of it. The can you do the job? And then the other whole part is what happens when you're in ambiguous situations and there's chaos. Can you, can you organize your thoughts? Can you communicate that to someone else? Can you get someone behind you? Can you advocate for yourself, right? Are you showing leadership behaviors, right? And some of the interviews are really just dedicated towards this. So I would say, think about the communication, make sure that your stories are succinct, make sure that you show your actions, your tasks, your results. Make sure that you are personable, that you're talking to your interviewee, that you're really thinking about how you communicate. You're not rambling on for 20 minutes about why you decided to choose the UX path, right? Or how you do a process. These are sorts of things to think about when you're in the interview process, different mindsets.
Awesome. Thank you, Noel. Yeah, you have so much wisdom. It's like we can just write a book here.
That'd
That's
be
what we
fun.
should do next. We will co-author a book.
Yeah, I'll co-author a book with you. That'd be fun. I'm
All
holding you
right.
to it.
All right. And by the way, I see lots of questions already, which is amazing. So far, based on upvotes, the winner is Bianca. But again, please keep reading everyone's questions and upvote them, right? So this way, and we'll take a couple of questions soon as well. And again, upvoting helps us understand what you guys are most interested in. Noel, do you want to briefly tell us, I know you mentioned soft skills, which are crucial and kind of often overlooked, but are basically even more important than hard skills sometimes. Let's talk just briefly about hard skills. Like, what do you think? Which ones are most important? What do you think is the best way to get those, etc.?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about like what I think some hard skills are from the context of me reviewing a portfolio. And then I think the second question can be like, how do you get them, right? Because those are two really great questions. So from a hard skills perspective, I think about portfolios in two categories. I think about like the physical UI, like the hard skills of the UI, and then I think about the UX. I think about the workflow, the why we're doing this, does it solve the right questions? And I think a really, really good portfolio, a case study, does both of these, right? So on the surface level, let's start with the UI. When we're talking about UI, there are some technical things that you want to make sure are correct in your designs. For starters, when you use color, why did you select certain color choices? Was that important or not, right? And are you consistent with your use of color? Sometimes you'll open up a design and you'll look at it and it'll look like what I call a gingerbread house, which is there's a lot of different icons. All the icons are different colors, right? You've seen the gingerbread house with me, right? And it's not tasty. You don't want to eat this cake. It's actually overwhelming. It's a sugar rush, right? You need it to be much more simple. The other thing that you look at is margins and spacing. So it seems very, very small, but it's these little details that do make a difference, because when a user uses a tool and they look at something that looks very clean and it's very thought out, down to the margins and the typography, everything, they're going to think they spent a lot of time working on this. I bet they spent a lot of time thinking about the solution and that it's going to help me. And there's more trust that's given to the brand. So the same thing here. If your front end and your UI is very sloppy, it's going to give the impression that your thought process is perhaps very sloppy as well. And that a lot of the work that's going to end up having to happen with you on board is kind of training you how to do what a designer would call like the fundamentals of design, right? And as a UXer, your job is to be way more than the fundamentals, right? You're expected to have the correct margin sizes and keep them consistent. The right color borders are consistent. Your typography has a ratio pattern that matches, right? You're not using really large font for the title and then a font size that's so small that it doesn't make sense and it feels like, is this the same tool that I'm looking at, right? Like, these are the sorts of things that feel very small, but they make a really big impact on the skimmability, on the mental work and mental cognitive load that a user looks at when they look at your piece. You don't want a hiring manager to kind of be overwhelmed when they look at your design to the point that they can't even get to, did you answer the questions or not? Because they can't follow it, right? And the tighter those details are, the more someone's going to say quickly, I've skimmed through this. Okay, this actually looks like they've met the fundamental details. This looks like a very beautiful design. Okay, now I'm ready to actually go in and see if they solve the question. Because if that stuff at the beginning is messy and it's just like, what is this? I don't want this to be launched at my company. Like, it's going to be hard for a hiring manager who has lots, to go in and read every single detail. I'm sure lots of hiring managers probably do, but don't put yourself in that situation where you have to make up for your design, right, by having them read through your full case study. Make sure that it's clean and ready to go. And a great way to kind of practice getting those technical skills is to you can do it actually on your own as well. You can take a product that you love, just open your app, pick Uber, pick Instagram, whatever it is that you use often, and copy it to the T. Open up your Figma file and say, exactly what margin does that look like, right? Or is that line actually black, or is that a dark blue? Is that a dark gray, right? Or take an ad. I like to use Nike ads because they can be very, very creative. And there's lots of corners and curves and colors, and really copy it, right? And put that side by side with your design and that design, and make sure it looks perfect. And you will learn through that skill set not only how to use the Figma tools or the other design tools you're using, but you'll start to get a better eye for spacing, for color, for typography. And I highly recommend doing it in an industry you're interested in. So if you're interested in banking, pick a banking app. If you're interested in consumer products, pick a consumer product, right? And that's something that you can do very low effort, very low cost on your own. The other thing that you can do is you can take a class, right? You can take a class in UX like BeginX, and and you can actually work with mentors and designers and other teams and practice that skill set at the same time. So there's lots of options available to you. And as a hiring manager, I would never look at someone and say, hey, they've done no training, they just have a passion for it. Let's hire them, and I can train them, right? Hearts over smarts, right? I would never say that. I would say, that's awesome. You have a passion. I'm so excited. I see a future where you could be an absolutely wonderful contribution to the team. Tell me, how have you invested in yourself to do this? And if they haven't done anything, I'm gonna be like, come back to me once you've put in some of the investment and you've done some of the work, right? And I'm gonna be looking for, did they go to school for this? Did they take classes in this? Did they do volunteer work for this, right? Does their portfolio showcase that they understand these fundamental pieces? And if they can answer yes to those questions, I'm going to be more interested in them as a candidate, right? So those technical skills are very, very important. And unfortunately, I do see a lot of junior and sometimes even mid-level portfolios where there are those inconsistencies, and you're just like, it's not a great start. Let's put it that way. So don't be one of those people. The other side is the UX side, right? So oftentimes you'll see, or I'll see a portfolio and it'll just start, well, here was the design ask, and now I'm doing the ask. And I'll be like, wait, hold on a second. Why is this ask important, right? Why should the user care if you solved this problem, right? Why does the business care if you solve this problem? Why is the business giving you, a designer or researcher, money to do and resources to interview clients, to do iterations, to do all these launch? Why are they going to invest in this project? Why should I care to read about it? And oftentimes that is something I expect a mid to senior person to answer very clearly. But I would also hope to see it in junior level case studies, right? To be able to explain that and to talk about that and to know why, because it's really going to set up the choices you make in your design, which is really what the UX, the product design portion, is about. It's not about the UI, right? It is about, why did I set up my template this way? Why is the information architecture set up this way? Why do I click on this step and then this step and this step? Why that order, right? Because there's a million different ways to design and solve a solution, right? If someone says, I want to travel to Europe, I could create a boat. I could create a plane, right? I could create an underground tunnel with a train. I could not walk there. That would not be a good solution. But the point being, I could do all these things. So why did you pick plane, right? Why did you pick this solution? Walk me through it. And so you need to understand a lot about like your users' behaviors. You need to understand like why you've made certain choices, and having that come through and start the foundation of your case study as you explain your design is a really critical step, and a lot of people miss it. And a second thing that a lot of people miss is the metrics portion, right? And it's okay. I totally get it. Sometimes these projects, you don't get metrics, right? Maybe they're not trackable, or maybe it wasn't launched for long enough to get them. There are lots of reasons. Maybe you left a company before you could get the metrics. I feel your pain. I've been there, right? But what you want to still do is say, what would success look like? So if this is why I should be doing this project, how do I know if I've actually succeeded in the design? What am I measuring for? And that's really, really important, right? Because think about this. When you're putting that case study together, you're essentially telling your hiring manager, this is how I'm going to do work at your company, right? And so at a company, they're going to say, I gave you this money, now tell me the results, right? And so you need to be able to show that you're thinking ahead of time about how you're being successful or not, that you've not just put together designs that you think are pretty, or that you like, oh yeah, this is so good, I came up with a great example. Does the user feel that way? What are those metrics of success? And put it there, put it at the very beginning. I would test X, I would test Y, and this is why I've chosen these metrics. They're not just generic, they're really thoughtful. And so what you're showing in all these pieces is essentially product strategy. And that product strategy is going to inform why you made certain choices. Lots of times when people show their case studies, they can't explain why their design was an answer to the problem, was an answer to the solution. They can just say it was a solution, right? But they can't say, I chose this specific format or this specific flow because it specifically answers these problems that we were talking about, right? And so you really want to be able to tie the strategy and the why and the metrics to your designs. And that is the crux of the product design craft, right? That sometimes gets overlooked for, let me go quickly to showing you how beautiful my UI mocks can be, right? How good I am at visual design, right? They kind of like skim past it too fast. And especially if you're looking to be on an advanced track, right? Or you want to move into a senior position, like that's the story that you need to be telling, like why you tried out all these different options. So I know I'm talking for a long time, and I could talk even longer about the portfolio piece, and I'm happy to answer more questions about it because there's a lot more to share. But I will say, like at the heart, like that's what the hard technical skills are. It's, can I visually design with all the design principles? And when I think about my UX as the craft, can I explain my story and why I'm doing it? Can I do it succinctly? And can I also showcase metrics of success or how I would do that? And so those are the things that I think are really important from a craft perspective. And, it's something that's learned over time, right? For those sorts of case studies, you really do need a project. You could do something on your own and say, I want to redesign this website, but you're going to end up making lots of assumptions as to what the problem was or why XYZ needs to be redesigned. And you're going to find that it's a harder story to sell. So doing volunteer work for a company or being a part of programs that allow you to work with clients and actually get that hands-on work, that's super, super important because it's going to give you those real life scenarios where you don't get to pick blue sky, whatever you want to design. There are limitations from the stakeholders. There are limitations from the development team, right, that are technically feasibly not possible. That sort of stuff is going to help you really hone in and perfect your craft. And those are the interesting stories to tell in an interview. Also, you get to talk about how you collaborated, which is a soft skill thing in real life, right? So it really is important to make sure you get that hands-on story. It's been a while since I've seen an interview where someone hasn't worked with a client. So just to give you a sense of like the ratio. Long-winded question for someone who's saying, speak quickly and articulately.
All right. Thank you, Noel. That was quite comprehensive. All right. And by the way, you got a compliment I see in the chat. How to learn to talk like Noel. You're so good.
I want to do a public speaking class someday. I'm trying to convince Michael to do it with me.
All right, and I see lots of questions, which is amazing. So as of now, Lou is the winner with 5 upvotes. And you have an awesome question about specifically about experience and case studies. So we'll come back to that because as we're progressing, basically what we're trying to do with the discussion, right, is we're not just exploring, okay, how do you stand out without understanding the background, without understanding how do you build what stand out with. Right, so that's why we're exploring all this like skills and experience and case studies, basically the product part, right? Because if you build a product first, then it's much easier to actually stand out versus if you just try to have something and try to market, it's very hard to stand out, right? So Lou, we're going to come back to your question. Then Bianca also has an amazing question specifically about LinkedIn and networking. We'll come back to that as well once we kind of get closer into the actual marketing and selling phase. The actual job search and interviewing. Okay, and then Valeria has an amazing question. All right, so we'll take those in just a second. Let's just progress through a couple of additional areas here quickly. Noel, just briefly, what do you think about coding skills? How important are those for UX folks? And
Yeah.
is it important to be familiar with coding or just collaborate with developers? Or
That's a great question. I will say that I have not needed to code in my career as a designer. But I will caveat and say that before I was sure that product design was what I wanted to do, I was exploring front-end engineering. And I had learned how to do some basic code in JavaScript and jQuery, which is now completely forgotten, except remember a little bit of CSS. But what has retained is the general process of like how one codes, meaning there are reasons why things are not possible to build, right? There are challenges, there are difficulties, things can take a while. And it has created a level of empathy that I have with the development team. It also makes me think differently about how to work with the developers. Developers understand the code and how the product is built. And as a result, they may have some really great ideas, and they often do have great ideas on how something could be built. And so I think it's very tempting in UX to say, I'm the designer, I'm solely responsible for the flow, do what I say, right? And it's just about how well I advocate for it, right? And just kind of punch your way through the situation. But what you're not really thinking about is that, again, it's a collaborative space where you're bringing your knowledge as a designer. Product is bringing their knowledge from the business, right? You represent the user, product represents the business need, and dev represents the technical feasibility. And so everybody can bring ideas to the table, and you can kind of collaborate until you get to a place that you really like, and then take that away and finesse and iterate on. And when you have coding skills, or you at least have empathy for how to code, working with a developer can become a lot easier, right? And you'll also know that just like a UXer, who we often think in terms of our own design thinking workflow, right? Whatever workflow it is you use to solve your problems methodically, developers have that process as well. And so if you understand kind of how a developer works, you could start to think about how your designs could become coded into that, or you could also think about, this is how they work. I can communicate with them in a slightly different way because I've had experience coding. I know how they're thinking through some of these solutions. And so I think that's really the benefit. I'm sure that there are jobs, probably especially in like startups, where being able to physically code your designs yourself become really useful. But I would say that that is probably, in my personal opinion, becoming less and less important as AI comes into the picture and as Figma starts to bring in AI practices. There are so many tools now where you can kind of write a prompt and say, how would you design this? And the tool will shoot out a design for you. Dev.0, Lovable, two examples of that. Figma Mate, right? These are examples of tools that are already doing it, and they will actually show you the code, right? And so you don't necessarily need to do the coding anymore because the design tool can do it for you, right? And so that's why I think it's maybe less important for the designer to need to do that, but more important for the designer to be what AI can't be, which is critical thinking in terms of why that is the right design, you know? So that is what I would say. If you are going to focus in on another skill set, I probably wouldn't recommend coding unless there's a company that you want to work for and they have specifically said this is a part of their process. I would probably focus instead on learning to use AI tools very effectively and very efficiently.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Noel. So we already touched on soft skills before, and I mean, I highlighted those, and you mentioned that as well, being like very important. Anything else you want to briefly mention about soft skills and best ways to obtain those?
Practice. I would say when you're in your schools or your current jobs or anything, you can practice your soft skills, your communication skills, especially if you're someone who's like nervous and doesn't like to speak up. Like, just tell yourself, I'm going to speak up at least once or ask one question in this event. I would do that. The other thing I would look at, and this is a very popular method from Amazon, but I've noticed it becoming more popular across lots of different companies, which is the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results. And if you present your interview answers that way, or even if when you're talking to someone, you answer in that way, you'll find that that's a really great template for communicating, especially if that sort of communication style is more new for you. So think about what was the situation that I had to do. I had to speak at this BeginX conference, right? And the task was to educate and to share knowledge on this subject. So my action was to recall all of the things that I have done in the past that worked for me, that didn't work for me, and then to articulate those specifically and give exact answers. And the result was that people left, hopefully, with a lot of really great knowledge that was actionable. And because 20 people out of 50 wrote a message afterwards about how awesome it was, right? So you can see, you can make you can use that STAR example literally in anything, right? I have to make dinner tonight, right? My situation was XYZ. So practice that. It's more about getting used to the format of that sort of talk, and then it'll start to just naturally come into your like daily life.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Noel. And so now we're getting closer to those hot areas that everybody has lots of questions about it in terms of experience and case study and portfolio. And we'll take some questions as well in a second on that topic. So in your opinion, here is the eternal question. How do I break into UX without professional design experience? And how can you build work experience when most employers are already looking for candidates with 1 to 2 years of that experience, even for entry-level jobs?
Yeah. You absolutely can, right? This is not an impossible task. Lots of people before you have done it, which shows it's humanly possible, and you are human, so you can do it too. So let's take a look at this generically. Let's say you are, we'll start with career changers, and then we'll move into someone who is new and doesn't have a career to transition into yet. So from a career changer perspective, you have work experience, right? So the first thing that you kind of want to sit down and do is you want to think about what in your work experience overlaps with the activities that you want to do in UX. Is there anything that if you want to go into research, were you working in a field where you had to talk to a lot of stakeholders and do interviews to collect information and insights, right? Did you do anything where you had to talk to customers, right? Maybe it was working in customer service, or maybe it was working in sales, right? Maybe you were a teacher and you had to understand your students' behaviors and make new plans from it, right? Anything can become a UX problem. And that's because UX, in addition to being a role, it is a workflow. It's a process on how to build a product, how to solve a problem. So if you think about the types of problems that you have faced and that you've solved in the past, you can use that as like your UX example, right? And you can think through how you work through the UX process to do that. So that's one thing I would say, which is like, you probably have stories where you've already been behaving and working like a UXer. You just haven't thought about it that way. And so what you should, look to do is look at those areas that you have a lot of experience in already and see if you can use that as a way to push yourself into the UX field, right? So if you have a lot of background with research, maybe you want to move into a research role. If research really isn't your thing, how can you use that to tell stories of design? And I would highly recommend taking a class. Like I said earlier, you really need to invest in yourself and show it, because the fundamentals are not going to be taught to you. So you don't want to be so convincing and such a good speaker that you then get the role and then cannot do it, because that's going to be a bad situation for you and your employer. And trust me, you don't want to be there. So invest in yourself and use that as a way to kind of guide you kind of past the imposter syndrome. Now, even if you have not had a career previously, you can still think about things that you have done that help transition you into like a UX mindset. So did you have to write a thesis paper? How did you go about doing that? Did you work in any sort of, internship or something of this nature where you were doing something similar, right? These are things that you can pull on to help you tell your story. Now, they're not enough because you still need that case study, but what they can do is they can get you into early conversations with stakeholders, with networking. And that's really, I think, where the start of the career process begins, which is going onto LinkedIn or Indeed or any of these job boards. Or I would say like LinkedIn or any place where there's like a network. Maybe your college board has people that you can meet that were alumni at your school. And you can say, hey, I have a passion for this subject. I see that you're in this area. I'm not looking for an interview. I just really want to learn more about what it means to be a researcher, or I want to learn what it means to be a designer. Can you tell me more about that, right? And is there a way that you can make that network less generic? Can you say, I noticed that you worked on this specific project that you listed on your LinkedIn. That's an industry that I really care a lot about. Or I use this product. I've always been interested in this company. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what it's like to work there, what you look for in a designer. Or further yet, I'm in the beginning stages of my career. I'm about to take some classes in user experience. I've noticed that you're a designer. Can you tell me what it looks like to get hired at your company so that when I do these classes, I could focus on building those specific skill sets? In fact, that last one is what I used when I started career changing. And I was like, hey, I'm not looking for a job. I'm just looking to make sure that I know what it is I need to learn so that when I come back, I'm qualified for these jobs. And I got a very high hit rate with that. And I meant it. I was sincere, right? And you should mean what you say, which is you really want to build. What you're saying is I want to build those fundamentals so that I am someone worth talking to later, right? And you don't want to distract yourself from the things that are important. And you can talk to folks and you can ask them, what those fundamentals are and how did they learn it? How did they get it? And what you're going to do is you're going to build a contact that's not based just on a transactional experience of give me this job, right? But someone who could be potentially invested in your career and your future. And you could say, I really love this talk. Can we continue to be mentors if you did, right? And then every now and then, write them and say, this is how my class is going, or this is how this opportunity went. How are you doing, right? Keep up the relationship because you never know when you're going to hit that stage where you do have those fundamentals. You're still talking to the network and they're going to say, you're the perfect person for this role that just opened up, right? And that's how a lot of people get jobs is through that sort of networking. Someone remembers them and they bring them on, they give them a chance, right? So you want to be building a lot of these relationships with as many people as you can. And they could be people your same level. They could be people higher up than you. I would actually recommend a combination of both because I think that talking to someone at your level can give you like, hey, this is how it actually is right now. You can get a visual of what the behaviors look like, a model of what the behaviors look like to get hired, but then someone up higher up might have the resources to hire you one day. So you kind of want a little bit of both. And I like to talk to a couple people at a company. So let's say you really want to work for Spotify, right? Talk to a couple people at Spotify. Get sticky, right? Really understand what's going on in their business. And don't just ask them questions, offer your own opinion. Oh, that's really interesting. This is what I think about this UI. Or have you read this article? Send them an article on AI and UX, right? Let them know that you have value to contribute as well, that you're someone who's fun to work with. And so think about networking as a very long play, right? And like I said, you can do it as a career changer, you can do it as someone entering the field, but it's something that you keep investing in over a period of time. And then hopefully something comes from it. And you never know. You might actually be giving an opportunity to that person that you were networking with in the past. In fact, I have done that. I started reaching out to somebody and then, for something I needed. And then I came back later and we worked professionally through something that I brought them into. So you never know how that relationship is going to work. I think that answers the LinkedIn question. Did I answer that question, Michael? I feel now I'm kind of off on a bit of a tangent.
Yeah,
but
I think you answered most of it, definitely.
Yeah.
So then Bianca, let us know in the chat.
I like to give details because it's very fluffy to say go to LinkedIn and network, but how you actually network, how you physically do it, that's really hard unless you've done it or someone has given you those tips and tricks. So forgive me for my details, but I think the tactical things are super helpful.
Awesome. All right. So I know a lot of people often ask, how many case studies do you think one needs to get a job, or at least their first job? Typically, I'm just going to cover that quickly. The magic number is usually 3. And again, 3 comprehensive, sizable case studies, not 3 passion mini projects, right? Or like something you took you a week or 2 days to do, but something significant. So our particular guideline, for example, is at least 6 weeks in duration. Part-time is okay. So this way it looks better on your LinkedIn, it looks better on your resume. Ideally have a couple of those. Don't waste too much time on too many personal projects, right? Great to have the first project being personal, right? Or just hypothetical, because it's probably not the best idea to work with a client right away as you're just learning the basics. But once you've done that once, then you should, in my opinion, personally, and based on like hundreds of people we interacted with and what worked, just spend your time volunteering, doing pro bono work, basically doing real stuff, right? It's just going to be much more beneficial, right? Noel, anything else you want to quickly add in terms of number of case studies?
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay, all right, awesome. So, Lou, let's take your question since we're finally got to the experience part. I know we already pretty much answered a lot of this, but let's see if we can, um, add a little bit more to that. So, Lou is asking, hi, I'd like to ask, I'm also a career switcher, have lots of experience, but not related to UX. How can I stand out if I only have personal or academic case studies to show in my portfolio? Thank you. And I know, Noel, you already touched on that a little bit in terms of repositioning your experience, but yeah, anything else you want to share?
Yeah, so I think the repositioning of the experience will help you like in interviews, but for your case study, you do need a UX example. Like I said, if someone, a hiring manager kind of, if I were to take a look at a case study and I'd be like, this is really talking about like graphic design, this is not really UX, I might think maybe it's nice graphic design, but then they should apply for a graphic design role, right? Or maybe this is more market research, not really research. Maybe this is not the right fit. There's going to be somebody else who has done that work, and that's the thing. There is going to be someone else who's done that work and has done it well, and they're going to be a better fit, right? And again, like I can't speak for every job, every hiring manager, how they handled it, but that's the environment that you're up against. So you really need to think about how to get those UX case studies if you're serious about pursuing a UX career. The best way to get them is to do the work. So you can either at your current company try and find your UX team or your product design team and say, I'd love to do this and help you guys as a side product. I'd love to shadow and do some work for you, right? That's definitely possible. Talk to your manager about it, say it's something you're interested in, see if you can work something out, right? They probably want to keep good talent. The other thing you can do is you can take a class where the deliverable is a UX case study. And there are a lot of options out there, right? So, and oftentimes, if you can look for courses that have you work with directly with clients, that's the best situation. Because what I used to look for is like, has someone worked with a stakeholder? Do they know the intricacies of communicating with a product team and how challenging that can be and how complex that can be, right? And have they advocated for themselves in those projects, right? So you really want to look for courses that offer case studies as the deliverable. And you want to sometimes maybe even look at the quality of those cases to say, did they go into enough detail and enough depth that it feels like it's going to be a good output for me, right? So like, what does the actual like agenda of these classes look like? Now, these classes are what you put into them. You put very little effort into them, you do the bare minimal, that's on you, right? That's going to be what you deliver, right? But if you say, hey, this class is offering me all this, I'm going to also maybe supplement it with reading from Nielsen Norman, or I'm really going to dive into this and spend time really perfecting the craft, making sure my margins, my UI, my front end is clean. Like if you go into that level of effort, then you're going to have that level of effort as your result, right? And there, you see it all the time. You see people coming out of classes and two different students, and the portfolio cases look completely different, right? And so you can ask yourself, who do you think the hiring manager is going to hire, right? So you really want to put in the effort, and it takes a lot of time, right? I think it took me months to update my last portfolio, and even then I was like, this is not good enough. Like, you just, it's one of those things where you'll just never be done, right? And you just at some point call it quits, right? But with a class, what's really nice is it time boxes it for you, right? There's a beginning and there's an end. You are going to have a period of time to finish that case study and kind of get it done. And so if you're one of those people where structure really helps you, that can be really great. And once you have one case study done with a mentor, with a teacher, where you feel like, okay, I've really learned the steps, it's much easier to go to, say, a volunteer place or an internship and say, this is an example. I'm here to build my craft and to get more experience, and now you have two. And that's enough to really share on your portfolio and kind of like showcase and get it done. So it's not impossible, but it's not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is a process. But if UX is something you're really passionate about and you kind of get like excited and jazzed about being like, I'm going to play with Figma and I'm going to learn all these cool UI things, or I'm going to get to talk to real clients, then you will find these things to be particularly fun. And I guarantee you, that kind of dopamine rush that you'll get at the end when you finish it and you see how beautiful it is and you see how much you've learned is unlike anything that you have ever felt before. It's going to feel so amazing, and you're going to see yourself really transform in such a short period of time, because again, these classes are time boxed. So you could say in two months from now, I will have a case study, period. I will have a case study I'm proud of, period. I will have a case study I can showcase to a interview, period. I can start applying for a job in 2 months, period, right? Knowing that if I got the job, I could do it. And so these are things that are worth investing in. Your time, your energy, your money, whatever it is that you're going to use as your investment unit. It's worth it. And again, it's not lost on a hiring manager that you put in that time, that effort to train yourself up. Because again, you're going to enter a role where it's a lot of like self-learning. The industry moves extremely fast, right? So we expect every designer to constantly be learning and upskilling themselves and staying up to date with what's going on in the industry. So showcase that you're willing to do it on your personal time. I'll know that you're willing to do it while you're working at the company.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Noel. And Bianca confirmed that, that definitely gave some good detailed info to follow up on things. And so let's take a question from Valeria. This is slightly ahead of experience and portfolio, but I still want to, since it's a little bit more broad, to take this as well. How can I stand out? Well, this basically just zooms, points right back at our topic. How can I stand out in a competitive market when there are hundreds of junior designers applying for the same role, right? So I'm sure we can write a book about this, but
I'll try to keep it tight. So the first way you can stand out is in your craft. How clean is your craft? And again, like, let's say you have a case study. Let's say you've worked with a mentor, you feel good about it. You really want to stand out? Go to something like ADP List. It's a list of mentors. Find several, not just one person, and have them specifically not look at your case study story. You should do that too, but have them look at your physical product and rip it apart for you. Like, look for them to just tear it to shreds. Find every single potential hole or gap or UI issue. Have them put that red pen on it and really learn from everything that you can learn and make it just perfect. And all of those notes, you get to use them in your case study story. These were the issues that I found, right? And this is how I solved them, right? So it's good stuff. You get to use it later. And then make sure you work with someone on your case study. Did you really share your case study in a way that it's super, super interesting? Imagine this. You turn on Netflix, right? Or Prime or Hulu. You watch a movie and you're like, meh, that was kind of boring. I don't really remember what happened. It was kind of a weak plot, but like the colors were kind of pretty and whatever, right? You know, you are the trash TV that you watch, right? At 1 o'clock in the morning, right? We all have that show. And now imagine that you watch a show and you're like, wow, that show was amazing. And you just can't stop talking about the plot, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And then the wild thing was I wasn't even expecting this. The next thing you know, your mom, your grandma, your brother-in-law, your next door neighbor, your cat, everyone's watching it, right? So there's a difference in those two stories, right? And you want to make sure that you are telling your story like that movie that's really interesting, right? There's a hero, there's conflict, there's wow, what was the conflict? The conflict was my design was completely wrong. I couldn't believe it. Look at how wrong it was, and look at how I fixed it. Or the stakeholder was saying all these things, and I was like, I completely disagree. And then engineering agreed with them. How was I going to change their mind, right? Like really, really ham it up, right? And then show the story. Make someone remember your story. Make them remember you. And it's so different than being like, and then my case study was this, and then I did the problem statement because the problem statement is what you do next. And then I did the personas because the person, come on, right? You're just reading a textbook to me. I am going to forget this easily. I'm going to forget this, and it's going to be really hard to talk about you afterwards because it just was not memorable. So make sure that your designs are memorable and beautiful. Make me think, wow, you're not a junior, right? And then make sure your story is memorable. And those are two things that you could do on the craft side. The other side is know who you are, or at least come up with an identity that you're willing to push, right? You don't necessarily have to believe it just yet, but you should. You should get in touch with what's your thing. Is your thing, I am really great at empathy, right? I was a waitress, and I was so good at being able to predict what my table needed, that I would be right there waiting for it before they asked, right? Or I used to work in theater, and sharing emotion and conveying stories is what I'm really good at. And I realized I want to translate that into product design. I want to know how to tell stories and help bring the user into what we deliver so that it's really, really user centric. What is that thing from your past or your present that you can bring in and rebrand and market, that says something unique about you? Because everyone's going to say, I'm really user centric, or I'm really good at visual design. I took a class in it. Okay, great. You and everyone else who's coming from a boot camp. But what specifically about you makes this so uniquely you, that when you are going to just pursue this? Did you have eyesight problem growing up? Did you almost, lose your eyesight due to something, which I've actually heard this before and it was awesome, and then become super interested in accessibility, right? Wow, that's really interesting. They're probably really going to care about accessibility, right? I used to be in marketing. I also did a year in product design. So I used to work with marketers and product folk, and I did some of that coding, so engineering. I know how to talk to people in different groups because I know exactly what they're doing and why they would maybe want to follow their workflow instead of mine. I know how to work together because everybody's way is correct, even though they're all different. There's no right, there's no wrong, right? So what is the thing that you are going to bring to the field? You're not going to just bring, I'm a designer, I took the class, hire me. I'm going to bring this specific thing. This is what I'm bringing to you. This is the value I'm bringing to you. This is the value I'm excited to build. I'm really interested in user-centric. I'm going to make sure that I really get to know the users better than anyone else. This is how I've been showing and proving that I'm someone that gets to know users. I volunteered for stuff that was research related. I volunteered at these other places. I read and listen to podcasts all about research, right? Prove to me that this identity that you're conveying is in fact something that you are displaying in your professional career. Prove it. Prove it to me. And then I will say, yeah, I could see this value coming to the office. In fact, we have a gap in accessibility. We have a gap in research, right? Or maybe a designer with the research lens would be a great fit. Show me what you are going to bring to the company other than just another hand to do basic design work, right? And so just try and journal it, get in touch with yourself, write down the things that you're good at, write down the things that you like. And if you need help marketing and branding that story, reach out to a mentor or someone on an AEP list, and they can help you craft that. Or better yet, go to AI and say, these are the things. What's my unique thing? Help me see the pattern, and have AI help shape it for you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Noel. Yeah. To also add to that, Valeria, so what is important is you're saying hundreds of junior designers applying for the same role. So it sounds like you're assuming that the only thing you're doing is just applying, right? So basically thinking about this not just from the product perspective, right? That's Noel mainly covered, right? But from the actual marketing of yourself perspective and selling perspective, right? So that's where you leverage networking. That's where you leverage actually reaching out to people, and so they actually remember who you are and notice, etc. And I always talk about this book, and we're not affiliated still for some reason, even though I recommended it so many times, called 2-Hour Job Search. Recommended to everybody in terms of how to search, how to network, how to do informational interviews. So I think, Valeria, you have another question over there at the a newer question that you added, right? So it will solve both of those questions really well, right? Because you'll basically learn how to not just mass apply, but how to have this strategic approach and use networking and informational interviews. It's not easy, right? It's going to be a lot of effort, but it's especially important now, to reach out that way, right? So people actually know about you, right? Because everyone is applying everywhere, right? And there is just so much noise. I just noticed that firsthand, right? You post a job, and then you just burr up, you get this tons of noise, and most of the candidates, they do not even fit into the role, right? So if you're able to, first of all, like Noel said, basically really fit into the role, right? And basically really have the competencies that they look for, right? That's one. And then basically network your way into that, right? Using that 2-hour job search methodology, you'll be in a much better position than like 95% of other people, right? So, all right. Noel, what are the top 3 things for an effective portfolio in your opinion? And
Oh,
let's well, you have a you have a challenge. Let's try to cover it in a minute or two.
I think that I'll take that challenge. I think that I've answered them already, so
Yeah.
I don't think I have a whole lot to add. But I will say, showcase your hard skills and your craft in your portfolio. In your portfolio or case study, tell stories on how you've collaborated in difficult situations. And I would also say, showcase how you have not just been a doer. So someone told me to do this. This was the design challenge. My product said, do this. That's why I did this. And here are how all the cool, complex ways that I've solved what I was told to do. But instead, I asked, these are assumptions. How do we validate them? Why are we validating them? Show that thoughtful process, because like ultimately your goal is eventually to have more advanced roles, right? And those advanced roles obviously take experience. And to get that experience, you need to be doing them. So you could be practicing being a mid-level as a junior, right? In fact, that's what you must do. So think about how the level up would behave, and then practice trying to do that in your work.
Awesome.
Fast.
I made it. Thank you, Noel. All right, so Abonti, and by the way, so if I mispronounce anyone's name, please forgive me. It's not intentional. So Abonti is asking, as an immigrant UX designer from Bangladesh, how can I stand out for junior roles without US local experience? How should I get prepared, right? And let me just chime in really quick, and then I'll let you provide more depth to that. And the fast answer would be to actually get local experience, right? In some way, in like one of the ways that we already discussed, volunteering, pro bono work, right? So without the barrier of company having to pay you a ton of money, right? Because that's when you try to, you can't solve that catch-22 by doing that, right? So that's why you want to volunteer or just find client projects, etc., right? That would be my recommendation. Of course, we're biased, right? We run a program that like provides you with that real experience, that helps you learn and grow and get real client case studies, etc. But that's the whole reason we started, right? Because there's a huge need, there is huge gap, and unfortunately, it's not always easy to do it on your own. It's definitely possible, right? So you just need to ensure that you have a team, you have a mentor, you have a good client, you have basically what I talked about in the beginning, right? You actually work on a product, not just information side, etc. If you're able to put all that together, right, it can just take a while. Right? It basically can be much longer. But that's what I would recommend. Instead of trying to kind of market what you have and kind of, trying to do the same thing and expecting different results, right? So that's not going to be very effective, right? And then add the 2-hour job search methodology to that, right? So first the product, then the marketing, right? And together, you'll make it work, right? But if you just market, when you don't have the competencies, that's when you're going to get a lot of frustration.
Yeah. Yeah, I second that. I think that's a great answer. And like, again, think about like ways to network well, right? The 2-hour job search book will help you with those tactical things, I believe. So if you're from Bangladesh, can you find someone on LinkedIn who's also in UX, who's come from the same country that you are from, right? Can you say, hey, I noticed that you broke into UX here. It looks like we have a lot in common. I'd love to hear your story, right? So there are some ways that you can kind of approach that. And I would also say, like, I don't know, I don't truly know the answer to this question. Like, I don't know how relevant it is to have like local experience. Lots of companies have like international employees, right? And UX is a process, right? It's not something that I think is unique to countries. The solutions may be unique, right? Even if you're doing like a postal app, right? zip codes are going to be different in countries based on regional, but like not the way that I solve the problem. So if you want to make sure that you're solving problems in a way that's compatible with the type of companies you want, go online and look at people's online portfolios. Some people have their case studies out. There's lots there. There are YouTube videos that show you how to do it too. And read through them and say, do my existing examples show that? Is it the same level of depth, the same level of quality? And if the answer is yes, then go for it. Start applying. If the answer is no, then I think, what Michael is saying, which is like, I really need to go back and make sure I have the fundamentals. That's where you want to look. So I wouldn't look and say like, where I come from is going to make an impact as much as it's like the quality of my work. Does it live up to the standards that I want it to live up to the jobs that I'm looking for?
Thank you, Noel. Yeah, these are great points as well. So, Bonti, I hope we have provided some useful insights on your question. But yeah, and based on our experience, typically a lot of companies, they do want to de-risk it, and that's why they look for that ideal candidate who has local experience, who have some experience, etc. Right? It's not impossible, right? Sometimes, but right now, right, the market is tougher still, right? Even though it's improving gradually, slowly, right? It's not as terrible as it was in 2023 based on our research. It's definitely already getting better, but it's still not like amazing, right? It's it's still going to take a little while, but it's getting better. Summer, so I think we answered your question already pretty much, right? Because it talks about, let's see if we can add anything. Do you think in-person networking will help with getting a job, or just stick to cold applying on LinkedIn, or do you recommend doing both? Lastly, what is a good strategy to attend in-person networking in New York City? I'm a UX design master's degree, recent grad. So yeah, I think we answered most of it, right? So you should do both, right? And you can use that methodology from the book that we mentioned. And by the way, Mika, if you haven't yet, please put the link to that book in the chat. So maybe that will be easier, or at least just the name to our job search. Steve Dalton is the author. Should reach out. I actually reached out to him once and want to invite him to one of the events. Maybe we should ask for commission too. And what else was Summer asking? So good strategy. I mean, yeah, good strategy. Noel, anything else you want to add in terms of, I mean, I would just say just go to the events, right? That's a good strategy. And make sure that you actually build relationships and not just use this superficial card exchange thing and like speak with one person for 1 minute, another person 1 minute, and then it's like useless, right? I would rather build relationships instead of make connections, right? On LinkedIn, right? So you want to actually have connections that you have something in common with that you click with. That's most useful. There's another book called Never Eat Alone. Keith Ferrazzi is the author. Mika, if you could put that please in the chat as well. That one is great about networking in general. And if you don't want to read a whole book about networking, just read the first 4 chapters. I think that's what I did years ago. And I really changed my mind about networking. And that was because I didn't really like it, right? And that kind of flipped the switch. It's like, oh, build relationships, help people, and mutually beneficial relationships, etc. Become a super connector, etc. And it's just like, if you look at it different, your mindset changes, and then you actually want to do it, and it sounds more interesting and more useful, and then you'll probably be more successful at it, right? So that's Noel. Anything else in terms of networking, LinkedIn, in person or online?
I love what you just said. Like, I would say, like, probably if there's one thing that you leave this session with remembering, it's what Michael just said, which is like these things that sometimes feel like chores, you can flip the switch, and all of a sudden they're not chores anymore. Go with your like, what's the intention? You're just like, I just need to connect with people and get numbers. That's very, you're scratching the surface, right? You're not going to remember them, they're not going to remember you. But if you go saying, I really want to find someone who's passionate about UX and just talk about UX. Like, I want to learn something about UX. the way you present yourself, the types of questions that are going to come naturally to you, they're just going to be different. It's the same thing about doing a UX project. It can feel like a chore, it can feel scary. You can just think, let me just go through the steps. But if you go to that through the steps instead, you say, like, I really want to solve this problem. Like, what could help users? I need to do everything in my possibility and that's possible to help them. You're not going to be thinking like in the lines or in the box, right? You're going to be thinking out of the box, because the goal is not to do the project and to finish it. The goal is to create something better for somebody, right? And so that could look so many different ways, because your goal is the value that you create, the good that you bring into the world. And so when you lead with that intention, right, of not being, it's all about me, I got to get a job, right? But I want to share this value that I have. I want to improve somebody's life. Like, that can help really flip that switch, and it can change everything. It can change how you write your resume. It can change how you network. It can change how you do your communicate on an interview, and how you tell your story in your case study. It can change everything. Whenever I go in an interview, I always think, and someone gave me this advice too, and it's, you hear it and you can forget it. It's like, oh, you're also interviewing them, blah, blah, blah. But yes, right? You're there to hear what problem they have. They're spending money to hire you, to help them solve something. They don't have to hire you. They don't have to hire anybody. But they have a problem. Are you going to be able to help them with that problem? So listen to their problem, talk about that problem, be a UXer on that interview, and say, yeah, like, that's an interesting problem. I've seen that too. I've explored that, in other places of my professional or student career. And this has been my experience with it. And this is how I think about those issues, right? It's a very different way of interviewing. You're coming to be like, I have something I can help you solve, versus, please hire me, I've answered all the questions correctly, right? It's very different, and it'll feel different for you too. So like, I know I'm like harping on, what Michael has already said very well, but it's because I think that this deserves that time, and it can really change how you present yourself and how you think about what's a very difficult and long-term process of getting a job and keeping one.
Awesome. Thank you, Noel. Thank you. Appreciate the kind words too. Um, all right, so we're running a little bit short on time, so we will have to wrap up relatively soon, but we'll try to take as many questions as possible in the meantime. So, and here's also something I wanted to ask you, Noel. In addition to what we discussed, what was mentioned, anything else you want to mention in terms of the following question? When a hiring manager evaluates portfolios, do they give equal weight to all the case studies?
To all of the cases, meaning like your portfolio, you have three. Do I weigh each of them the same?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I would say it depends. I mean, if you're in an industry, let's say, that is very specific, and you have a case study that's really relevant to that industry, it's possible that a hiring manager may look more closely at that, because that's related to the job that they are asking you to do, right? But otherwise, I think that what a case study shows is your thought process and how you solve problems and how strong your craft is. So it really doesn't matter what the subject is, in that regard, especially for junior level roles. It does help, though, of course, to have industry related experience, because it means that some of the complexities of the role will be known to you already, and you may have thought through them or seen patterns and have some experience. So it just means that onboarding you might be a little bit easier, and you will probably know whether or not you're happy in that industry, versus hiring someone saying, okay, they've only done mobile experiences for the consumer. Now we're going to bring them to desktop and internal products. Are they a great fit? Is this really what they want to do? Are they going to be happy? So like, those could be some questions that, run through somebody's mind. But I don't think it should make that much of a difference. There are some companies out there that specifically look for people who have totally different experience, because they want to bring in that level of diversity. So it really just depends on the hiring manager and the company, I'd say. There's no like true and hard, fast rule.
Awesome. All right, Noel, I think probably last question about case studies and portfolios. So we kind of hammer it, whatever is the term, like cover it in depth. What types of projects are most effective in one's portfolio? Again, in addition to what we already discussed, and how can you actually tell hypothetical projects apart from real ones?
Um, well, I think you should be fairly transparent. You should be honest on whether or not it's a hypothetical problem or not. And that's because if you get questions about that project, you're then going to be in a situation where you're going to have to make them up, right? And it's going to get pretty obvious by your ability to answer them with depth whether or not that's a hypothetical problem. So you definitely don't want to be caught in a lie. But I also say, let's just say you are great at coming up with solutions and being able to remember them accurately. It's possible that the solutions you come up with are not like really true real life experiences, right? And you're going to miss out on that. And someone may say like, oh, they went through this project, they didn't come across this, they didn't come across that. That's really weird. I don't know what the quality or the scope of this work was, or how in depth that they went, because they didn't come across these things, right? So I don't think it's any gain to say that this was a real life experience if it wasn't. No one's going to like take points away from you on that. They're just going to be like, okay, this is how you thought through the problem. It's hypothetical. They may say you went out of your way to look for a project, right? Because it mattered to you to get practice, so you did a passion project. You can call it a passion project, right? So I think it's actually to your benefit to say that. With that said, you're going to want that experience working with stakeholders. So it's not that a hiring manager needs to see that you have a real life case study. It's that you should have a real life case study to practice those skill sets and have those fundamentals and know what you're working with. The end goal is the skill, right? You hear these stories about how, like, J.K. Rowling didn't get her book rejected by a whole bunch of people, or actors and got passed up for roles, and then they later became super famous. They weren't saying like, I didn't get that job, right? I should have proved to that person. They're saying, I have value. I'm going to continue working on my craft until the point where it does show up and it does develop. So make sure that you're doing it so that you are getting those foundational skills and that you are getting to learn how to think, so that it shows up in these interviews and you can demonstrate them well. And when you have the job, you're going to be successful. So be honest about your case studies. And if you feel like something's missing, pursue a class, pursue a volunteer work, so that you actually get the experience. You're only doing yourself a disservice to not pursue that.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Noel. So let's try to do like a rapid fire of these questions to
Okay.
make sure we get through as many as possible. Sumya is asking, how do you feel about designed resume versus straightforward traditional Google Doc resume, especially with respect to ATS filtering?
I prefer traditional. I think it's safer, but I don't know. That would be an interesting question for a hiring manager. Sometimes people have two resumes. They have the one that is easy to read by the reader, and then once they get through, they send the recruiter the more UXy pretty one for the hiring manager to read.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I agree on that as well. All right, so Bianca is asking, for portfolio, I've heard different opinions on whether or not the website is needed. Some people have told me yes, others have told me that all you need is your case studies, the PDF slide decks, so you can tailor to the position you're applying for. What are your thoughts? So just to chime in quickly, Noel,
Yeah.
I want to. Yeah, you can go ahead, and yeah, then I'll just add anything afterward.
Yeah, you do need the website because for a lot of these jobs that you interview, they ask you for the link, and you need it there. You don't need to go in full depth on designing all of the case studies in the website, though. You can just put it behind a password or just do a couple of paragraphs and then say the PDF is attached, right? So you could do that. And I tend to show PowerPoints or presentations for the actual interview so that it goes into more depth than what's online. You want to be very, careful about what you show and things like that, what's actually available online. You want to have more control over that. So I would say you can do the website. You can do it really, really low effort. but put enough in there that it's going to make someone interested in bringing you on board. Too little and you won't pass.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Completely agree. Yeah, especially, I mean, maybe if you're like really experienced person already, then it might be less important. But if you're transitioning, switching careers into this, yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
important to have that.
Yep.
All right. Caitlin had a question about developers. When we were talking about developers, I think that's when she probably wrote it. So let's just take that quickly. And by the way, Caitlin, great to have you here. On that note, she's asking, how do you befriend / make a good impression on the development and engineering team? How can you start off on a good foot regarding collaboration and communication with them? So, Caitlin, first of all, I would just say, like, basically understanding some of that, understanding their language, understanding them a little better, right? That will give you like ahead of others, right? Instead of just designing pie in the sky type of stuff, right? So basically, maybe learning a little bit of development, maybe just learning a little bit more about communicating with developers, right? And just as you practice, as you have more of that experience, you will get better. And just be humble, you know. And it's also, it's not just about development, right? It's just about like making a good impression with people, right? So maybe reading a book like How to Win Friends and Influence People or something like that, right? That could help as well. Noel.
That's good. Yeah, developers are people like you and me. But yes, I say that.
Surprisingly.
I say that in jest, but to make the point, which is like we're people, right? So oftentimes you can share your design, and the developer will say, "No, this will not work," and you will be like, "I spent so much time in this," and you'll get defensive. Try not to get defensive. They have really, really good reasons for why something cannot work. Get curious. A great way to develop a relationship is to say, "Tell me more about that. Can you teach me? I'd love to learn more. That's a really interesting point. I see where you're going for it. Let me try a few other things. Does this work?" And really treat them as a partner who has a lot of knowledge to give, knowledge that a lot of us do not have because it's not our specialty.
Awesome. Also, Debbie was asking all the way at the end, and I'm just going to quickly answer that. Can we stay connected with Noelle through LinkedIn? And I'm sure Noelle will share her LinkedIn in the chat a bit later, or maybe Mika could find her and just share that. I know she always loves connecting and helping people. Or Noelle, if there is any other way you want anyone to get in touch, just feel free to share in the chat as well.
Yep.
All right.
I'm also on ADP list as a mentor there, so you can sign up for to speak to me, and we can talk about your specific challenge or goals in more detail.
And Noelle is also on beginners list
Yeah.
as a more regular. So if you want much more interaction, not just one meeting, just
True.
kidding. But yeah, that's true actually. All right, and Valeria was also asking how can I ask school alumni for referral the proper way. So Valeria, basically what I was saying about that 2-hour job search method, you'll find all the information there. Basically just doing information interviews. There's a whole methodology. Basically, don't just ask for a job. Don't ask for referral right away if you don't know them, right? First, you want to build a relationship. And then if you click, then you can ask for referral. And that's exactly what that book talks about. All right, let's see what else we have. So many questions. Amazing work, guys. Really appreciate your putting all your questions here. That's just really awesome. So Gloria is asking, do people actually read a cover letter? Should I use that space to upload something else, i.e. case studies, one-pagers, etc.?
Can you repeat that? I read someone's text and I was laughing on our chat.
All right. Yeah, Gloria was asking, do people actually read a cover letter? Should I use that space to upload something else?
Oh, I wish I knew the answer to this. I don't know. I don't.
Probably depends on the job, right? It depends
Yeah.
on the employer. Like, for example, we're posting something, right? And we actually requested a cover. And we didn't, like, for example, I didn't request like an official cover letter, but we requested an answer to specific questions, right? And that was really important, right? If someone just ignored and not answered those specific questions, that just filtered them out automatically, right? So that's basically So it depends on the employer, right? If they're asking for it specifically, of course it's important. If not, then it might be less important. Um, yeah, so that
Yeah.
would be my quick answer.
And you're right. Like those questions that are asked at the front, like my experience is that they're being asked for a reason. So if you can't, if you don't meet the criteria of them, you may not be a good fit for the role. So you probably do want to take the time to answer them.
Yeah, yeah, and I know a lot of people, and they have experienced, the challenge of being on the candidate side, right, of LinkedIn, right? But when you are on the employer side, you often, faced with similar challenges just from the other way around. Like, for example, both Indeed and LinkedIn, they added this easy apply functionality. And that's what also just creates a ton of noise. Like, that's how you get tons of resumes, tons of people. And what it does also is most people, they don't even read the description. Like, and that's we had to change the whole hiring process because we realized it's not the people, it's LinkedIn's UX or Indeed's UX that forces that easy apply and basically just. So the key point is that uh, try to follow those directions and instructions, and that can really separate you from everybody else. Because we had like 90% of people not follow the instruction because it was basically harder to do than, yeah. And oh, Miri was also asking, how do you demonstrate hard skills like, well, I would say soft skills probably, but okay, they're soft, but they're hard. Uh, how do you demonstrate hard skills like communication, collaboration via resumes and portfolios?
Yeah. I would say, have you collaboration could be a whiteboard session. So have you led any sort of um, uh, brainstorm session or workshop within UX? If not, can you lead something specifically so that you can put it on your resume? Or can you take a class in it and say, I've taken classes in workshopping, so I'm very comfortable doing XYZ? Well, that's one way to do it. If you've ever worked on a project with a certain number of people, you could say, I was the facilitator and lead of a project that was with three other people. My specific role was this. This was my results and what I achieved at the end. Like those are things that showcase collaboration. Or there was, I built a new process on how to work with our developer in designing and handoff, which suggests if you collaborated and partnered with another team. These are examples of things. So anything that's like interconnected, where you partnered with somebody that you were leading specifically, or you had a primary role in, that would be a great way to show collaboration skills that aren't
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and basically just want to basically demonstrate and highlight, right, that what you've done. Usually it's through experience, through practice, right, and mention those keywords, right? So that's kind of obvious. But then you'd also need to talk through that during interviews once you get to that stage as well. So I also want to quickly take this other question, also from Caitlin. I just saw a job posting yesterday for a junior product designer that was posted 16 hours ago, and it already had 720 applicants. In that situation, how could you stick out and avoid being just one resume among hundreds as it relates to the application or other parts of the hiring process that may not be as obvious? So just the first to quickly say something, Caitlin, again, networking and reaching out. This numbers game, and again, and this the reason they have 720 applicants, one of the reasons is because of that stupid easy apply feature, right? That is there. And it's as easy as just tapping and clicking something, right? It doesn't take a lot of effort often for many candidates. And that's why there are just a lot of clicks. And you'd be surprised, most likely, probably like 80% of those are not really a great fit. Again, based on our experience at least. Um, yeah, and just separating yourself, reaching out to people, building a network. Networking became even more important, even like when we had the event with Jared Spool. Not sure, like for those of you who are not familiar, he's like one of the founders, basically, of the pioneers of the UX field, right? So he was saying that as well. We have the whole recording, which maybe Mika could share in the chat. He was talking about that as well, in terms of how networking, just reaching out to people and building connections became even more important with this proliferation of just mass applying, because everyone is applying everywhere because everything became much more remote. And yeah, that's Noel, anything else you want to add?
I think you know more about that than I do, so that's a cool answer.
Thank you. Caitlin, feel free to reach out for more if you need more help. And yeah, 2 hour job search is your answer, or just similar approach, right? Networking, basically. That way, you're actually one of the few people who they remember and know.
Yeah. And also, I would not want to be number 701. So if you can check daily in the morning, and try to get those, or maybe do notifications. Some people have notifications on sent to their phone. I think you can do this on LinkedIn. Try and be one of the first people, right? Do it daily. Don't keep waiting. Be vigilant.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like the whole like system is just a little bit absurd at the moment. I think like if you think about mass applying and job boards, it's just like again, when I went through this experience recently, I was just like, oh my God, this is just like it should be changed, it should be improved. It's a noise for both sides. Like employers just get lots
Yeah.
of unqualified applicants who are not a fit, and then candidates are just applying, clicking this apply for thousands of times, instead of doing something more kind of meaningfully. Yeah. Um, so Jeremy's has asked, I think, Noel, you already mentioned some AI tools, but then maybe you can mention those again or anything else you want to recommend. Any
Yeah.
any AI tools that you would recommend that would be helpful to upskill, etc.
Yeah. So everybody knows ChatGPT probably. I love it. Push the boundaries on what you can do with it. If there's an industry that you're really interested in, say fashion, you can say stuff like, teach me about the fashion industry in the United States. Who are the big players? What is the size of that industry? What are the major challenges that this industry is facing? What are the newest projects that they are putting out? Why are they pursuing these things? Like, these are the types of questions that I would kind of ask, even if I were starting like a UX project. You can ask this to ChatGPT. It will give you great answers. In fact, ChatGPT 4.0 is will recognize that you're asking almost for like a research report and say, do you want this like advanced blah blah blah? And you can say yes. And that takes like 15 minutes to download, and you get pages and pages of everything that you wanted. It's a fascinating way to learn about a field. So if you're going into a new job, or if you're interviewing for a job and you want to learn about that industry, you could say, I've been reading up about this industry. It sounds really interesting. This is what I've learned, right? You could really speed up your time just doing that. Or you have you're going to work with a client on a new case study, and you need to learn a little bit more about the problems. Maybe they don't have the answers, or they can't communicate it to you well enough. You need that for your understanding in your portfolio. Ask ChatGPT to help you fill in the gaps and bring those questions then to your stakeholder. It's a very cool way to become more advanced in the craft, because you're becoming a subject matter expert very quickly. The other thing that I love using, I mentioned it earlier, is Dev Zero and Lovable. These are both tools that build mocks and wireframes and kind of sketches for you. So you can put in a prompt, and the simpler the better. I've tried more complex prompts with lots of like details, and it kind of breaks. You don't want to say include this, include this, include this. It tends to not be able to understand it that well. But if you say, build me a mobile phone app that's going to help me, order food to my house. I'm vegan. Keep it really generic. Watch what it does. And then you can keep iterating on it. Hey, I need something that's a little bit more blah, blah, blah specific. And, it won't give you the design that you're going to end up using. It'll give you what we kind of call like brainstorms or crazy eights. It can help you start thinking about solutions and get a place from which to start, like writing an essay in school. It's that first paragraph that kills you, right? If you can just get that done, you can get the rest of the way. It's the same, it's very similar with the design tools. Dev Zero is black and white. It's not as perfect when it delivers it. Things are kind of wacky sometimes. Lovable's in color. It's clickable. It's quite interesting. I highly recommend playing around with those two. There are transcription and research tools as well. I think Otter's one, although I haven't used it. And I think actually Michael probably has a really cool list of great AI tools that I learned from BeginX. So if you're looking for great UX tools from AI, I would reach out to him, and he can also give you some guidance there.
All right, of course. So what I also wanted to have quite a few things. if anyone has any really burning question, right? Let's say you attended the event, right? You really want to learn something, and like, how do I stand out as a junior candidate? And it still hasn't been answered. So please put that in the chat or in Q&A. So I want to make sure we have it not addressed some of like those, like basically something that you would say, oh, I was really hoping that this will be covered and it wasn't, right? So to basically add that question in Q&A or chat. Also, remember, if you're using the chat, please use that. There's a little drop down. I think by default, Zoom makes that host and panelist only. So some of your messages may only go to us and not be seen by anyone else. So if you mean to actually share it in the general public chat, so make sure you change that in the drop down. All right, so let me see if we have. Let me see if we have anything else. All right, so Miri was putting just a general question, how to stand out. Okay, so I think we covered that quite well. So that was a while ago. It was like an hour ago. All right. And by the way, right, feel free to use the chat to put like what your biggest takeaway was so far, and just let us know. Right. I want to see like what you guys have learned so far. And I know it's a way of typically run long form events, right? So there was a lot. And you'll get the recording once it's available. But yeah, let us know in the chat like what was your biggest takeaway. Now, here's another question, so we can quickly take from Sumya. So if I have previous experience as a graphic designer, would that help me going for a product designer position? So Sumya, the quick answer is definitely yes. It's not gonna be enough by itself, but it puts you at an advantage compared to many others coming from other backgrounds, right? That's based on our experience. Let's see, what else do we have here? So Bianca, I think we already addressed your question here in terms of maintaining professional relationships with connections on LinkedIn and leveraging those to target specific opportunities. Again, that's exactly what that book talks about. So definitely take a look to our job search and use that methodology. All right, so I see a thumbs up. Hopefully that's from Bianca. All right. So Rutuja was asking, how can someone with internship or self-initiated projects send out among applicants with formal experience? So I think we already covered that in terms of just having case studies and pro bono work. And anything else you want to add to that, Noel?
I think that's pretty good.
Okay. All right, so we'll have to wrap up in a second. Noel, here is like one of the last questions that I want to ask you as well. Anything else you want to add in terms of what are the most common mistakes that you have seen that candidates make when applying and when going through the interviewing process?
Yeah, I think one mistake is when you go through your case study, you kind of memorize it and then you can't answer questions about it. So it's almost been too shallow, and then you're left wondering if the person really understands the content. I think another mistake is not paying enough attention to the detail and the quality of the actual design work. There are inconsistencies. It's like spelling errors, right? Like you wouldn't hire a publisher who had spelling errors in their resume. Like you don't want inconsistencies in your design. The other thing is like not knowing exactly like what role they're going for. So, showcasing market research work specifically, and then trying to get a UX research role. I mean, maybe you can transition over, but you need to be able to tell the story why. Or kind of same thing like brand creative, but not taking the time to actually build a UX creative story. So I think to me, those are kind of like real obvious ones. I can't really think of anything else. Oh, yeah. Spending too long on your questions. I am obviously giving a lot of detail for a purpose, but on an interview, you want to be very succinct because a lot of times it's the same questions that everybody gets asked. You can't get through them, then there's a lot less data to interview you with. And it also means you can't get to the point. So being super, super succinct and super clear is important. I would say that those are important things. And I also really like when people have interesting questions to ask me at the end. It's not a deal breaker, but it does show that they're thoughtful and that they're treating this interview as if it's something special.
Awesome. Thank you, Noel. All right. Continuing very quickly our rapid fire wrap up of the last few questions. And yeah, we'll take them quickly because I see like you guys are asking very good questions. I see like lots of this, really like insightful, deep questions in Q&A, which is great. So Bianca was also asking, looking at current job postings, should I be concerned that job postings are asking for more than what my role would require? Does that mean I should try to learn some of the other skills being mentioned, or is the company asking for too much? Also, should I still be applying for that position anyways? So Bianca, the quick answer is mostly, like if you're mostly a fit, then definitely yes, right? If you're mostly not a fit, let's say if you have like 20% of what they're asking for, probably not. If you have 70 to 80%, probably yes, right? Because some postings, some job descriptions, they just ask for everything. And you have to also see if it makes sense, right? Because sometimes they would ask for 10 years of experience in a tool that's been around for 5 years, right? So, basically, and yeah, so don't be afraid, especially in terms of years of experience, right? If they're asking 10 and you have one, maybe it's a stretch. If you have one and they're asking for two, I would definitely apply, right? So it's or something like that, right? So,
Yep.
Noel, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, definitely. I think most people just say like minimum 3 years of experience, but that's the entry level role. So those are going to be the roles that you're applying for.
Okay, awesome. Caden's question, how can I learn to improve my communication skills as a junior designer without real hands-on work experience? So Caden, first of all, try to get that real hands-on experience using, I'm not just saying that, but obviously using the techniques and tactics and everything that we just talked about, right? And basically practice, practice, practice. That's just my very fast answer. No.
Yeah, I think I mean, you need the practice, right? It's kind of like saying, how do I get to be a great saxophone player without practicing the saxophone? Your voice is a musical instrument, right? It makes a sound, it emotes an emotion, right? You get to choose what emotion that wants. Do you want to be sad? Oh, sad. Do you want to be angry? Do you want to be elated? Like these are choices that you are making with your voice, right? So you have to practice it live. And there are public speaking classes that you can take. You can watch stuff online on video and practice it yourself in your room. You can take a stand-up. What are those comedy classes called, or improv
Improv.
class? Improv. Highly recommend it. It's super embarrassing. I suck at it, but it's a great way to get out of your comfort zone. Those are some tactical ways. And then with communication, everyday life, you can do this, right? How do you communicate to your friends? How are you communicating in your professional work or your student work right now? Like, there's always a way to practice communication. You have to choose it and choose to practice it. It is a muscle, it is a skill. There is also like a connection between the mind and the mouth. So if you never practiced saying things fast, when you do get to an interview, you're going to stumble over your words. It's not going to come out fast. So you have to practice talking, bringing the mind, what's in the mind, to the physical part of your face, the muscles and stuff. I know it sounds a little strange, but it's really true. So do what you can. That's why people say to practice your interviewing with a buddy and to say it out loud, right? It's all part of that same sort of like muscle memory.
All right. Thank you, Noel. Sharvari, recently I have seen people are getting UX UI jobs, but they have a lot of experience. Still, if you're a beginner, how much effort you should put into that application or any opportunity? So, Charvari, I'm not exactly clear, but I think what the question is basically, how do you compete with all people, with all the people who are like much more experienced? Is it still like, does it make sense, right? And keep in mind that often people who have more experience, they're often applying for or a better fit for a little bit more senior roles, right? And if you're great and you're both applying for junior roles, your advantage is the cost, right? Because if you don't have lots of experience, you probably will cost less to that company, right? So you still have an advantage. So if you're really good, that's your advantage as well, right? So, and just take into account what we discussed, right? So it's there's still the market is tougher right now. Yes, it's still tough. It's, again, as I said before, it's better than it was a year or two ago. It's still not easy. It's still tough, but it's getting slowly better. So just keep building yourself up, and that will help.
Yep.
All right, last question. I know we're a little bit past the time. There was a question about which I really liked. What was it? Oh, Bianca, is it better as a junior? Is it better to present yourself as a generalist or someone in a niche area, basically specialize in a niche area such as research?
Neither good or bad. It doesn't matter. So if you are you know that you have an interest in research, then really be like, I'm interested in research. If you know it's design, then introduce yourself as design. Actually, it's probably better to pick. Yes, I would definitely pick a side. But what you can say is, I have experience. If I'm going for design, I have experience in research. This is how I use it in my design work, right? Or if I'm a researcher, I have experience working with designers. In fact, I've done some hands-on design myself. I understand how research and design work together. But you do want to like pick a side. A lot of the jobs are going to be specifically you're either a researcher or a designer, but they're going to have that gray zone where you might need to do, if you're a designer, some small research on your own, and that'll just show that you're more familiar with all of the stuff, and you can be less hands micromanaged essentially.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely, and still, in the when you're learning, still definitely learn the whole process, right? So it can be much harder if you, let's say, just want to do research and you only focus on research phases and you just like know nothing about design or collaborating with designers, right? So that's gonna make the process harder for you, right? And basically have fewer opportunities. And sometimes it can be easier to just get the more classic UX role, right? That kind of covers both, or at least some of the phases of design as well as research, right? So basically, you want to open yourself up to more opportunities as well, and you want to kind of basically have that cliche T-shape, right? So basically, learn the process and then learn one of the areas much better than the others, so you're not missing anything. Noel, any final tips or advice on how to be hireable, how to stand out in that first job search?
I would just say keep it up. It's a long process. It's really easy to burn out. Give yourself grace periods, give yourself breaks. If you've been going for a few weeks and you're exhausted, give yourself a couple days, give yourself a week off. But don't give up because it's going to happen. And it is a numbers game in some ways. And you just got to keep going forward and keep doing it. And keep in mind, build your craft as you go. So constantly just try and find new ways you can get skill sets, because if you can then showcase to those skill sets in your portfolio, and that's just going to make it easier for you to get hired. So the job process cannot just be about networking and applying to jobs. It must also be about what are you actively doing to grow your skill set so that you are more marketable and more successful when you do get the job.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Noel. So if we did not get to your question, I know we actually got to most of them, like probably like 70%, but you guys had a lot of questions and a lot of great ones. Don't try to address it at the next event. So join our next event and also feel free to just reach out as well. So thank you so much, Noel. This was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed the event and got some great insights. as promised, right? So people often ask about our program that I was talking about earlier, right? So we usually talk about it briefly at the end. So let me also quickly tell you a little bit about this program that we're running, since it may be a great opportunity for some of you to not just build a very strong real client portfolio and real work experience, but also get crucial soft skills like team collaboration, client management, and presentation, along with career prep to master UX job search and interview, and so you can actually land a UX role. So who the program is best for? The program is best fit for ambitious people who know UX basics or come from a design, research, creative, tech, or related background and look to transition into UX in one of the most effective and efficient ways and without quitting their current jobs or other commitments, so it's part-time. We're also pretty selective and look for motivated and committed team players. So we ran many cohorts and helped over 160 people or so transition into UX. Alumni of the program have been hired by very many companies like SiriusXM, Coach, Google, ABC News, Meta, JP Morgan, many others. The program was ranked by SwitchUp as a best UX program for many years in a row, and they actually put us as #1 this year, so which was really exciting. And also got featured in Fortune magazine and ADP list, etc. Right, so the advisors and mentors are also UX practitioners from companies like Google, IDEO, American Express, The Economist, and many others. What you gain after completing the program is the following. So you build not just hard skills, but the critical softer skills, real experience with a robust portfolio, expand your professional network, and master UX job search and interviewing so you can actually land a UX role. Right, and in fact, our grads have done so well that we also offer a money-back guarantee. So you either land a UX job or you get your tuition back, plus an extra $500 on top of that. All right, so if it sounds like you may be a good candidate, you can learn more on beginx.com, and Mika is going to put the link in chat as well. Our cohorts are quite small and do fill up relatively quickly, so please act soon. Otherwise, even if you're a great candidate, you may still end up on the wait list, so that happens too. Also, to thank everyone in our community who attended this event, you'll be eligible for a $500 tuition credit if accepted. To claim that credit, what you need to do is by tomorrow, go to the website and you will see the link in chat and request a free, no commitment career transition consultation or hireability assessment, as we also call it as well, where we'll do we'll do that first UX job hireability assessment for you. So it will be quite helpful. And by the way, these sessions are designed to not just be some like quick program pitch, right? That are designed to, to tell you about the program, right? They're designed to take a look at your background, skills, and experience, identify what is possible for you to do to become a highly hireable UX job candidate, uncover the key bottlenecks restricting your UX career transition progress, create a personalized action plan that will get you results, and also see if you may be a good fit for the UX Career Accelerator program. All right, so in addition to telling you about the program, also wanted to briefly mention that we frequently run different types of virtual events, so we'll keep you updated about upcoming events and share resources and events from other organizers as well via our newsletter that is usually sent every couple of weeks or so. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to our wonderful guest for taking the time to join us and provide all the valuable insights. Again, we can write a whole book here. Noelle, it was a huge pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I love speaking at these events, and I got to be a mentor at BeginX, and it was a really wonderful experience. So yeah, definitely thank you so much, Michael.
All right, awesome. So I'll see you at the next event. Cheers.